Right, time for part three. After doing nothing, this is trying to do avoid pre-processing. Well, why would you want to do that? Okay, so far we've covered modifying processing during our DITA processing. We've also covered a couple of new transforms for creating new outputs. The idea of avoiding pre-processing means that you can increase the number of inputs. So let's see what we can do here. The first plugin is really a very small, but in order to process any files, you've got to have some sort of format. And this is a format saying, okay, give this format to me and I will just give you a tiny little topic which has got nothing in it. And more importantly, it adds in processing hooks. This means that the file itself is acceptable because it's a known format, and it means that because there are these hooks available, other subclasses can do a better job about getting hold of things. It's purely one Java class, and then a few bits and pieces of JavaScript so that we can call other areas. As I said, this does nothing, but it's the basis of all this. If we look at the plugin itself, you can see there are a couple of additional extension points, which is saying when you have me in the process path, you will be able to do additional stuff either before you call me or after you call me. If we look at the target's called pass-through. It says, well, I want to be able to depend on pass-through process, and indeed it itself does depend on a pass-through process. Make sure I can initialize things, and then I will fire off other formats thereafter. Well, here's an example of it in use. It's very difficult to show how an abstract works, but let's show the second plugin and see how this actually all connects together. Let's start off with a Word document. Wait for Word to start up. You can see this is just a Word document. It's got a series of headings and it's got text. This is something which someone who's not familiar with DITA would like as an input format, but of course the input format cannot be processed. If I now take this Word document and put Word document and try and generate it as a PDF, it will go through ordinary DITA generation. Wait for a second, wait for the screen to come up, and then it will be just processed as if it was another file. How on earth does it do this? Well, let's see what the result looks like first. I'll just bring up that PDF. And there we go. It's in here. Output, document out. Not quite ready yet. Taking a long time to put. Oh, there we go, 94K. I have got that same text is now in my PDF, which obviously means I can then use my standard styling. I can use my standard way of holding all these files in one place, and all my sources can be held together. Well, what's actually happening here? We run this pre-processing. Pre-processing means that I can successfully go through pre-processing, and then having done that, this parser, do nothing parser, means that I will get a dummy file in there, and then I iterate through the .job XML to say, what am I going to replace me with? And the first one of these plugins that we're going to replace me with is a pandoc execution. We have, if we have a look at the let's have a look at the code in question, which would be passed through. It would be the pandoc test. Input Word doc. In the document data map, we have set this up to be format pandoc for that particular file. So it knows that if I have my Word document, it will say don't pre-process. Then when there's a callback after pre-process to say, right, now that I've done successfully managed to get through pre-process, what do I need to do to change this Word document into proper DITA? This is where pandoc comes along. Pandoc is a Swiss Army knife. It's an integration tool for transforming one markup into another. It runs a Lua template which transfers from one format to another format. Now, the translation goes from one file to one file. So the input is effectively a chapter. This can then be expanded to a series of topics. Now, there is already a dummy template you can modify, and that dummy template uses HTML as an output. Obviously, DITA is kind of a like HTML output, so it's a relatively simple matter to transform it so that it will transform to different formats. So you could start with Markdown, you could start with Word, and you'll get DITA coming out. Unlike the existing Markdown plugin, Markdown obviously is a standard format, it does not require you to have proper hierarchy for your H elements. But you're able to get this information coming through. Inside, it is iterating, which is why you've got that little bit of JavaScript, around each input file, and then reads the any metadata to make sure the metadata gets processed, because obviously you can't put the DITA metadata into a Word file, and then it executes pandoc using the command line shown below. Have a quick look on the code, which is pass through pandoc, process pandoc. All I'm doing here is just checking that it actually runs, and it is possible to run this on both Windows and Unix. You can see the difference between the Windows executable and the Unix executable is that for Unix you execute the file you want, whereas Windows you run a DOS command, and then the thing you want to run is part of the additional parameters. So yeah, we just process that file, and it will call this this executable again. Once again, there's stuff for pandoc, stuff for stuff for Windows, stuff for Unix. Now, the only thing that I have added here, I mean, pandoc is a well-known open source tool. The only thing I have added here is this Lua file, which is a structured way of calling various different elements, and then you can put in more and more pieces. So you can get out a format of your choice. It works for Word, it works for Markdown, it works for about 30 other different types of wikis and REST, RST, and what have you. And what you can do is you can say run the normalized DITA transform to get this chapter out, and then you could use that as your baseline thereafter. Second option here is to do some processing before you pass stuff into the pandoc processing. If you have ever come across Swagger, it's a REST API specification. You can load create the files in either YAML or JSON. Now, there are already tools which will take that file and create Markdown. Of course, this markdown is not necessarily going to be of a quality that it is transformable directly to DITA. So we need to do a little bit of post-processing in order to get something out. So let's have a show an example of that one. Here we go. The Swagger tool is a jar, so you just want to do a Java task to run it. I'm using the 1.3.3 version, and its output is Markdown, but there needs to be a little bit of further processing, and that little bit of further processing is going to be the job of JavaScript, because I can, once again, I can load my file, I can modify it, and I can add in things like the markers for sections and the markers for examples. And because I am able to, there we go. No, I keep doing that wrong. Because I am able to, that's it there. Oh, there we go at the top. The output of a thing is got paths and overviews, you have security and things like other elements, and it will have the following format. You can see that the definition of the various HTTP verbs has got standard colorization. So a get is blue and delete is red and what have you. And once again, it is compatible with the Prism JS plugin, so I'm able to show my JavaScript probably formatted as JavaScript, and I'm able to see tables coming out in a format which is readable. Show details is under V2, and it shows what the elements and the responses are. Where are we? That one. Third and final way element I have here, again, they're all very similar. Once again, we get back down to just pure JavaScript, because it is reliant on the other two elements. Postman is another REST API tool. And if I create that, I'll be clear and I'll go Postman. Once again, I can take an input file, which Postman is just JSON. If you're talking about just JSON, then you would obviously be able to load and process that file using JSON parse. And then you can take each element from that and then somehow create the output. It is saying here in the warnings that it's found multiple H1 headers, which means that it wouldn't have been valid as Markdown using the Markdown plugin. However, this pandoc processing is able to get around this. And again, Prism is saying, hey, what is this Swagger get and Swagger post? That's how it's getting this colorized header. So if I wait for it to finish processing, just take a little bit longer. See where it's gone. It's not quite there yet. For some reason, it's taken a lot longer than it should have done. Okay, so what we have here is just purely a plugin consisting of 3 files. I'm just doing a little bit of processing. I think I can go that right. So that one last bit. Yeah, it's now building. This is quite a long one because it was quite a long file, and I just show this, trying to speed it up. Oops. And you can see, yes, it's got lots and lots of documentation taken directly as an appendix from that file. So this one here has got a complete set of documentation, including highlighting based on YAML, including highlighting based on console, including curl statements, including JSON and what have you. This will all be dynamically loaded by the Prism plugin. And if we finally just have a quick look at the way that is created, test Postman with folders. All you need to do is to create a chapter with a topic ref, fine, and a chapter with an appendix with a format JSON Postman. So you just define your format. You extend the existing pandoc situation, and you've got another process. This could be extended to include things like JS-doc processing. You could actually go through to modifying their markdown to doing something, or it could be expanded to doing Java APIs, because Java is able to process to XML, and the XML could be processed to intermediate DITA, and therefore you could come through. But that's obviously all a subject for another day. So that's the end of this one. It's time for any questions. Please ask any questions in the form below.